All right, let's talk about housing. This is a hilarious study, Krystal, that you found. Let's put this up there on the screen. Right now, we're obviously in the middle of a housing slowdown, and it turns out that a lot of people are actually pretty happy about that. So right now, 78% of Americans expect to have a housing market crash. This is according to the latest Consumer Affairs study, which is a major consumer information service that businesses buy in order to tell what consumer sentiment is. However, 63% of those people actually want to see a housing crash. And if you dig deeper, 75% of people say they have cash stored away to buy a house should the market crash. They actually have an actual crash savings account. Dig even deeper than that, and you find that the youngest generation of adults, Generation Z, is actually the most eager for the crash. 84% are hoping for a housing crash and actually have some money that is saved up specifically in order to try and take advantage should this all happen. And look, perhaps they will get their wish. Let's put this up there, that U.S. homebuilder confidence right now is at the worst slump since 2007. As I actually have said before, that's a big problem because homebuilder confidence means that people who are, let's say, like halfway through a project may actually not finish their project. And if they don't finish their project, then we are going to continue to having a massive housing shortage across the nation. Right. But I just think it's crazy. I mean, when is the last time that you've had a sizable chunk of Americans who are like, no, I want these markets to crash? And I think it's because of the disparate ownership, which is predominantly It's the wealth class and boomers who hold property. Everybody else is frozen out of the market or frozen out far more so than they have been in previous generations. So they're like, yeah, screw you. I want this thing to crash so that I can buy in. And especially Gen Z. I mean, for Gen Z, they don't have a chance of buying a house. Like realistically, on average, even if you live in like a normal metropolitan area, it is just mostly unattainable without decades of savings. And if you have student debt or credit card debt, it's almost entirely out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, this is becoming the real class dividing line is, asset owners and not. And of course, the primary asset that most Americans own is a home. If you aren't able to get your foot in that, door of home ownership, it becomes very difficult for you to sort of establish that, a base of some sort of net wealth, a base of financial middle class or working class stability. And so I have been wondering, as we've been covering the housing market a lot here, as you guys know, I've actually been wondering about these numbers of like how many people are listening to this and hoping that the housing prices and the market crashes, because then that gives them some hope and possibility that they will be able to, at some point in their life, also buy a home and have the stability that can come with that. And now we have the numbers to back it up. So I did think that was really interesting. I mean, the problem, of course, is that the reason that the housing market is falling off and you have this, home builder sentiment at the lowest level since the housing market collapsed in 2007 is because as the Fed hikes rates, the thing that is most sensitive to it is the mortgage rates. And as the mortgage rates go up, yeah, the top line number might be going down, but in terms of your monthly payment, that is going up and up. So it's really, even if the market continues to go down and have problems and housing overall, the sales price becomes more affordable, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be easier for you to get your foot in the door. And then the other problem here, of course, is that the real issues we have in our economy are about supply, about a lack of supply, and that is certainly the case in the housing market where we have not built sufficient housing stock, especially post the last financial crash, to accommodate a large and growing population. When you have those interest rates going up, you have a slump in home building, and that then again exacerbates the price and the shortage in the home supply market. So there's a lot of complicating factors here that make it unlikely that even if the market really does crash, unless you're in a position to just plunk down $500K in cash, that you're still going to be in a very difficult position when it comes to acquiring a home. And I think that is reflected in the concerns of renters as well. 91% of them fear that increased mortgage rates will price them out of the home buying market.
I mean, almost certainly true.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely the case.
Yeah, I mean, you're caution is warranted, which is that, yeah, look, the price may come down, but like, how are you supposed to afford it if the price does go down? Do you have enough cash in order to make sure that you don't do that? Otherwise, you end up paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. And just because you may have, people said that the average person has like 15 grand or something. People who are saving for a house have something like 15 grand saved away. I mean, how are you supposed to make any sort of down payment with only $15,000 or even $29,000, which is the on average for anybody who's not Gen Z? So look, it's a cluster basically all the way around, because at the same time, I mean, you don't want retirees to see their main source of wealth just dwindle away, possibly what they were betting on, in order to make sure that they didn't have to work anymore. So all the way, it's just not good. The solution generally is actually probably lower rates and just ton more housing.
Yeah.
How you achieve that without also feeding the wealth gap, I genuinely just have no idea.
It's keep the rates low so that mortgages
so people can afford
are affordable.
Right.
And then you need, in addition to the government help in terms of securing a mortgage, you also need some help with that initial down payment, so that it's not just people who have rich parents who are like fronting their down payment that can get a house. And then you need rules basically blocking permanent capital from buying up the existing available housing stock, because that's the other problem. And as you said, you need to build a whole lot more housing. So I guess the bottom line here is, the same moral of the story that we have a lot of times when we talk about the Fed, which is that like the Fed messing around with interest rates is not going to fix the problems in the housing market. They don't have the tools at their disposal to, create a lot more housing stock, to help people get that initial down payment, to block private equity and other permanent capital for buying up entire communities so that, they're able to come in with all cash and basically muscle out every first-time home buyer from the market. Those are things that only legislators in Congress and, some executive action can do. And since we have a more or less dysfunctional political system, that is not really on the table at this point.
Yeah, and hilariously enough, literally as we're filming this, the U.S. housing start numbers came out in terms of the number of building permits and starts on single-family housing, and it plunged 18.8% year over year just for this month, 9% in the last month.
See, and this is the problem with the Fed increasing interest rates. Is it's not just that it's dealing with some of the wrong problems and causing a lot of pain for people and potentially triggering a recession. It actually is actively exacerbating the supply issues that led to inflation in some of these categories to start with, and I think that's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, there we go.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.